Hello everyone, this is Genius Yoshi, and today we're going to be playing a deck for fun. We're going to be playing Supporters Tribal. Basically, actually Nick Gallus 4559 asked a question on one of my videos. What do you think would make support a better ability? And it's true that I've been trashing quite a lot on supporting, saying that it's not a good ability, so I thought, let's test it out and see how good it is. No, my answer was support would be pretty cool if you could kind of share the life of a character, so you don't only gain just the combat power, but you actually absorb part of the damage the other character takes. I think that would make, well, probably a pretty good keyword, kind of lifelink type keyword. But we're not here to talk about this, we're here to build a supporters deck. So, who is going to be in our supporters list? Well, the core card is going to be the Scepter of Arendelle, because that allows us to give support to any character, which means we get to maximize the use of the mechanic while playing this. Well, we're kind of wasting a card playing the Scepter, but we're really going to see just how much value we gain from supporting with the Scepter of Arendelle. And I must say that through some playtesting in items deck, I was happily surprised with the Scepter. So let's just see how far we can push this. So what's the idea of the deck? We're going to be using the Scepter of Arendelle, and we're going to be using supporting mechanics to give some weakling characters lots of combat power. And, well, let's start by putting some of these weakling characters into play. The first one we're going to put into play is Gramma Tala. That's a superstar card, not a weakling character, Genius Yoshi. It's awesome, but it also only has one power. So what would be more awesome than turning our Gramma Tala into ink is taking down an opponent's character with Gramma Tala. In the same way, Mickey Mouse Detective, awesome card on its own, but only one combat power. What if we support it? Suddenly, it becomes an enter the battlefield very strong card that can take down an opponent character. At least that's the theory of the deck. Okay, so now what are our supporters? We'll be playing a pair of Heihei. I don't want too many Heiheis because it's a relatively bad card in general, and support one's not really that great. But I want to have bodies on the battlefield early in order to win these combats and kind of quest as I go to actually give my character some bigger power, because that's how support work. Support means that your character is questing and giving its combat power to another character so that it can punch a little harder. So since we want a somewhat aggressive curve, we're going to be making use of the Lilo into Simba combo. Lilo being a 1-drop that quests for 2, and Simba being the bodyguard that allows us to protect Lilo. Also, if we give extra combat power to Simba, we can challenge, and then Simba is going to be the bodyguard. Or even we can let Simba be the protector, the supporter. Quest with Simba, he then becomes the protector with the bodyguard effect, and the other character can do a good battle. So really, Scepter of Arendelle is the key card, and there's a ton of synergies, so I'll stop talking about all of those and just say we want to play weakling characters with good abilities that will boost and sacrifice, and characters with decent combat power that can help with our strategy. So there's another weakling character with a fantastic effect in those color, and that is Rapunzel. 1/5 allows you to draw cards, heal your characters, quest for 2, everything we're looking for. So Rapunzel fits perfectly with our theme. We're going to be playing Jasmine. Another relatively weak combat-wise, but the two still kind of useful. She also heals, she's a 5-drop, inkable. So that's pretty good. Then we're going to be playing Merlin, because he's an actual raw supporter, supports for 3. Because we're not always going to get that Scepter of Arendelle. One card I'm really interested to try on this list is Ariel, Whoseit Collector, because when we play an item, we may ready this character. And that means that we can quest with Ariel. We can, and if we have a Scepter of Arendelle in play, I know I was going to say talk about combos, but I gotta talk about this one. So use a Scepter, give the ability to Ariel to support our characters. Quest with Ariel, give the combat boost. Play an item, Ariel readies. Ariel quest. Ariel still has support, so she can give her combat power to a second character, or give her combat power again to the other character, giving a massive boost. I think that the synergy is pretty cool, and I want to see if I can play it out and land it. But if we're going to be playing that, we can't just be relying on Scepter of Arendelle for our items. Thankfully, there is another very good item in these color, in Amber and Sapphire, which is Lantern. So you're going to be playing 4 copies of Lantern. Now let's take a look at our list. So we're obviously a rampy list because we're playing Gramma Tala, we're playing Lantern, we're playing Mickey Mouse. So we ramp pretty hard. We're somewhat aggressive because we have the Lilo and Simba combo with a pair of Heiheis. So we can get that aggro going pretty early. Then we ramp, and then we go to combat. But since we're ramping, we might as well add some of the big ramp payoff cards. In particular, we'll want to be able to remove some of our opponent's bigger threats. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Hades. Since we're ramping, why not? We'll also be playing a full 4 copies of Stitch, Carefree Surfer to get more cards. Looking back at our list again, 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops. Maybe you can use a bit more 3 drops. Our 4 slot's pretty good. So everything else should be inkable 4 drop, inkable 5, 6, or even 7 with our Stitch, and maybe some 3 drops. So we're going to add some 3 drops to fill in our curve, and we're going to be adding 3 Maximuses. Since we're playing combat synergies, might as well play the horse kick and see if we can land some of this. Otherwise, Maximus is okay on par. He has good combat power. And we'll play 3 of those. And then we want to play a bunch of heavy inkable drops. Maximus is pretty good. So I'll be playing 4 copies of Maximus. And he's a supporter with high power, which is exactly what we want. Should have included it sooner, but he makes the list for sure. And then we need 1 more card. I mean, we can play Stitch Rockstar is a good option. We can play Let It Go, another good option. And that's about the options that I want. Right now, in terms of removal, we have the 2 Hades. So we'll probably be playing... Do we want to go 2-2? No, let's go 2-2. Let's just split the difference. 2 Stitch Rockstars, 2 Let It Go, and that completes our list. And we can see a list here: 2 Heiheis, 4 Lilos, 4 Scepters, 4 Gramma Tala, playset of Lantern, Simba, 3 Maximuses, because 4 Mickey Mouse, 4 Ariel, 4 Merlin, 4 Rapunzels, 4 Jasmine, 2 Let It Goes, 4 Maximus, the big one, the Palace Horse, 2 Stitch Rockstars, 3 Hades, and 4 Stitch Carefree Surfer. And that's a list. I'm very curious to see how it performs. I think it's going to do fairly well because it has the best of aggression and some of the best of ramp all in one package, all glued together with some decent synergy. So let's test it out and see the deck in action with some games. Here we go. Let's see what we have. Maximus, pair of lanterns, Simba, Ariel, Hades, Maximus. Hades goes away, and so does a lantern. Ariel's not inkable. We want to send that back. Then, depending on what we get, we either turn to Simba or turn to Lantern. Probably don't want to 3-drop Maximus, just because we're probably going to Lantern. Let's try that as the mulligan. We get Jasmine, Let It Go, Simba, Heihei. And we get to go first. Well, we're going to ink a Simba because we have way too many 2-drops, and that one's inkable. Play the Heihei, get our first supporter on the battlefield, and pass the turn to our opponent. Heihei just a 1/2 support. Opponent plays a Stitch. We draw a second Maximus, Big Horse, which we're gonna ink. Don't need 2 of those. Don't think Heihei does very much right now. We don't really have a good turn 3. So let's go for the Bodyguard. Then the opponent is playing Amber. Amber doesn't have an answer for this, and I didn't pay enough attention to what our opponent inked. But I'm going to quest with Heihei and pass the turn to our opponent. Oh yeah, our opponent did ink a Mickey Mouse. So we only know about the Amber of our opponent. Opponent goes for Simba. You should not have bodyguarded your Simba, dear opponent, because we get to use support. And suddenly our Simba can take down your Simba and live to tell the tale. We've drawn the 7-drop Stitch, which will go into our ink pool because it's not getting cast anytime soon. Thus we'll play a Lantern and pass the turn back. Alright, so Heihei doing some work. I think it's a bit of our opponent's mistake. They should have played the Simba unexerted. A Cheshire Cat comes in. Alright, we are going to ink something. And opponent's probably going to try and erase with that color combination. So I'd be interested in playing Jasmine healing Simba. So I'm going to ink the Let It Go. Activate the Lantern. No. Alright, well, quest with this. And then I can't seem to activate my Lantern. I would want to quest with Simba too. Alright. There it is. Activate Lantern. Play Jasmine. Heal everyone. And the race is on. As we pass the turn back to our opponent. Jasmine Healer. Queen of Agrabah. I really like this card. It's a nice inkable 5-drop. And occasionally the healing comes in handy. Like in this scenario, where our Simba took down our opponent's Simba, and we get to fully heal it. So it's still protecting Heihei from Stitch. The cards are really lining up in our favor right now. What is our opponent going to do? Ink another Mickey Mouse. That's the 3rd one that got inked. Ooh, and Stitch Rockstar comes in. Suddenly I really regret inking my Let It Go. I think that'll be all for our opponent. We draw a Gramma Tala, which we probably want to ink at this point, so we have access to 80s to remove the Stitch on the next turn, assuming we draw something inkable. We can play the Maximus as a bodyguard. Who can bodyguard us from Stitch. So I guess we just quest with everything. Pass the turn back. I was considering supporting Simba into the Cheshire Cat, which now that I think about it would have been a better move. Forgot that if there's 2 bodyguards, I don't pick what to attack, my opponent does. Which is unfortunate, but the reality. So that Cheshire Cat took down our Simba. Well, Stitch took down our Simba. Didn't go for the cards though. Well, that's 1 card from the Simba, I guess. Opponent inks a Mother Gothel. We draw an inkable card. And we should now be able to activate our lantern to play Hades. And at this point, we want to remove Stitch, I think. Otherwise, well, Maximus can take down Simba. We can quest with Heihei. Jasmine can take down Stitch and live. So we can remove the Cheshire Cat, actually. We have beautiful attackers here. It's funny, that extra one from Heihei is actually coming in quite handy this game. And then we'll pass back to your opponent. 9 to 8 in our favor. Opponent plays a Mad Hatter. Well, inks a Mad Hatter to play a Simba. And a Cusco. Alright. Well, we quest with everything. Then play a Merlin. Our opponent can't have board wipes. We are going to have Maximus there to bodyguard for us. And that Jasmine's paying dividends. But of course you can't quest. So we're passing the turn back 15 to 8. On the verge of victory. Opponent plays a Flynn Rider, but it's too little too late. As our opponent has no way of taking down our Maximus. And the rest of our squad, really. And that'll be game 1 in favor of support. Victory. Let's go for another game here. What do we have? Maximus, Mickey, Simba, Jasmine, Stitch, Maximus, and Lilo. So we have Lilo, Simba, Mickey, and Inkables. I think we just keep as is. This is a beautiful hand. Not like this. Sorry, Stitch. Actually, we have double Maximus. So let's just send one Maximus back. Get him Lilo in play. Going first is always helpful. Lilo's going to apply all the pressure we need. As I expect our opponent to fire the cannons at any point. Okay, so Sapphire. And then our opponent is playing something with a trigger. Okay. What is our opponent playing? Develop your brain. Okay. So Sapphire is what we know right now. We're going to send that Stitch into the ink pool, which is its main purpose. Bodyguard our Lilo. And quest. As we pass the turn back to our opponent. Opponent develops their brain again. Oh no, that one's going into the ink. To cast another Develop Your Brain. That's a lot of card sifting. Alright, well, we'll ink Jasmine. Play our land. Oh, no. Play our Mickey. Get one more ink into that pool. And just quest. Because why not? Opponent is building the perfect hand at this point in time. As we are building the perfect ink and perfect field with Mickey. Okay, opponent sends a Maurice into the ink. So our opponent is playing items. Presumably. I want to see a card on board though. Because otherwise we're just going to be playing Beatdown. Plasma Blaster. Once per turn, deal 1 damage to anything. Well, that does bypass Simba's protection. Here, I really want to ink the Lantern, and that's the problem with Lantern at this point in the game. It's clunky. So I can ink Rapunzel to play Maximus. But I don't have that much questing ability on the board, or I can just play the Lantern, which I want on the board anyways, but losing the tempo of having Maximus. Well, these folks are all going to quest. I really want a bit more out of my Rapunzel. I think I'm just going to play the Lantern. I'll slow play it here. After all, our opponent is playing Plasma Blaster. And ideally, I'd like to see a good game here. Lilo into Simba is a fast block. Lantern just allowing us to gain ink for characters only. Yeah, it's definitely an items deck. Not making use of a blaster here to take out Lilo feels like a misplay. We hit another Simba. It's going to go in our ink pool. So we get to play Maximus, the Palace Horse. Sure, we can bodyguard. And quest with everything as we pass the turn back to our opponent. Ariel's 3/3. She could take out Simba. Let's see if our opponent can get out of this. Steel does have some pretty good board wipey cards. Well, there's Steal Your Sword, which would not do very much. Opponent's one jump ahead, trying to get some ramp and catch up. Inking a smash. That's kind of what I feel about the support ability. It doesn't come up that often. Typically just a good curve and powerful cards will do the trick. And now we have the beautiful take out Ariel, draw 3 cards, heal you, and that is pretty much game. We can quest with Simba, quest with Mickey, play Gramma Tala, then pass the turn back to our opponent. Our board is flooding with characters. Our opponent doesn't have anything. I am prepared because our opponent is not playing Ruby, and good cards just took over without support coming too much into play here. Opponent lands a Maurice, but we get a Just Quest. And as game number 2. Let's go again. What do we have here? Hades going back. Simba's pretty good. The rest of our hand's pretty decent. I would like to see a Lilo, but I'm afraid of hitting too many non-inkables, so I'm just going to send a Hades and Mickey Mouse. And I'll keep the rest. Oh, and we get super lucky. And we hit the Lilo, which is fantastic. You have the aggressive curve into the Rapunzel. I really like Mickey Rapunzel too, because Mickey can just take a beating. Rapunzel can heal it. Stitch Rockstar. Perfect card for the ink pool at this point in the game. We'll play our bodyguard, quest with Lilo, and pass the turn. Does our opponent also have the Simba? Opponent inks an Hans. So opponent is Emerald, Amber, super hard aggro. You can't quest with Lilo. So I think our opponent is considering it, or okay, opponent quest with Lilo. It's a bad idea. Against this deck, I don't think I need Let It Go. It's mostly small characters. I will play Mickey Mouse. Find an extra card to put in the ink pool. And then go and challenge Lilo with the Simba. Exerting it, questing for 2 with Lilo, and passing the turn. Alright, opponent has a Flynn Rider. Sends a Mad Hatter into the ink pool, and a second Flynn Rider. These things are annoying to take out. But in this case, I can recover cards with Rapunzel. So I'll be quite happy to challenge one of those with Simba. Take a second damage counter. At this point, Lantern is not even that useful. So I don't mind throwing that out to Flynn's effect. Flynn Rider forcing me to actually discard a card whenever I challenge it. Opponent's activating another card. Be our guest. Opponent is singing. As turn passes back to us, we draw Merlin. At this point, we maintain our same game plan. We want to play Rapunzel. Get out of this bug. Okay, we did get the challenge. I want to cast Rapunzel. Oh yeah, it was the discard ability. Oops. I've accidentally discarded Jasmine. That's okay, because we'll draw into another one. Really wanted to discard that Lantern though. And I don't want to ink anything. Probably. I think I'm gonna ink Jasmine. I mean, this is a support deck, so I'm gonna keep this supporting card. I do think that Jasmine's the better keep. Which again reinforces the fact that why support when you can just play good cards? Although there are some good cards with support. That Maximus, the 4/5. Let me bring it up. No, not this one. The other Maximus. Maximus Palace Horse is actually solid. Solid stats with bodyguard and support. And that's the type of supporter we want, where we're not sacrificing stats to do it. We can take out Flynn Rider. This time we'll discard the Lantern. Now that I understand how the UI works for it. We can play Merlin. The ramping would probably be a bit better here. But again, we're going to be playing Merlin and see if we can get that support ability to be useful. And we're quite ahead on board here. And this is a nice curve. Lilo into Simba, into Mickey, into Rapunzel. Lots of card advantage, lots of pressure, and just keeping a solid board. So that part of the deck is performing fairly well. Fortunately, it's a little Scepter of Arendelle, Merlin. They're not really pulling their weights. Still fun though. Had good value with Heihei in game 1. Opponent has Lilo, Hades, and Tinkerbell on the battlefield. Have a Merlin, so we can quest with Merlin and support one of our characters give it a lot of combat power. But we don't have anything to challenge, and the only thing which we could challenge is that 1-powered Lilo. So that's not going to help overly much. There. Play Mickey, ink a card. And we're going to ink our Maximus too. Just to be ready to play Hades next turn. And we're far ahead, so we get further ahead. Gotta love having a 4-powered Lilo at the ready. What do we get to 18 lore? And there's very little our opponent can do. And our opponent resigns. And we win the game. And that concludes the gameplay for this video, but I think we are due to review the deck list and some lessons learned. So one thing that worked really well is the Lilo into Simba, which we knew is a powerful combo. But the interesting thing is that we're not playing a super aggressive list here, and the combo still performed really well. So going Lilo into Simba, into Mickey, into something like Rapunzel was still backbreaking for a lot of opponents, and provided us with an influx of cards and ink to set up a mid to late game. So you don't have to have a super aggressive list to play the early game, because just getting that pressure and forcing the opponent to react to it was pretty good. Another thing that happened is that Ariel Whoseit Collector didn't perform too well. In particular, she kind of got stuck in hand being non-inkable. There's a game that's off screen where I'm stuck with Ariels, Hades, and Mickeys, and I just can't ink anything. And maybe I mulligan too aggressively, but also with the Lantern. So there's a lot of uninkable cards. We're playing 5 in this deck, and having this uninkable 4-drop is a bit of a problem. The Scepter of Arendelle didn't really do anything, which is a little unfortunate. I wanted to ink it almost all the time. Then again, so I think we can remove the Whoseit's Collector, probably remove the Scepters of Arendelle. Heihei did do some work in game 1. That surprised me. The +1 that it gave to Mickey or to Simba actually proved to be quite useful. So I think Heihei's a little better than completely useless at this point. Still not an overly strong card, but it did show some cool things. Outside of that, well, just playing strong cards in general seems to be the way to go over the nice little synergies. So just the strong curve, the powerful cards tend to just outpace some of our supporters. Like Merlin wanted to go into the ink pool every time because he's not as powerful as, say, Rapunzel. Also, jumping over some of our ink, getting into Jasmine with this combat type deck or high toughness characters was pretty good. Jasmine did quite well. Lantern is a card that got stuck in our hand quite a few things. So I do prefer Gramma Tala and Mickey to the Lantern, and Lantern is quite optional there, and 4 copies probably a bit much, especially when we're digging early game for a Simba. So it's that mulligan mechanic where we get a partial mulligan, and since we are going to be digging quite aggressively to try and find our Lilo Simba start with good inkables, Lantern is a little off here, because we're not digging for Lantern or having a specific 1 Lantern play. So I would cut in the Lanterns here, and I think I just prefer having inkable cards. So maybe we can replace it, or actually our 2-drop's already there, so maybe we should just be replacing the Lanterns with an inkable 5-drop at this point, and it would do better. So overall, supporters didn't turn out overly great, but we did learn a couple of deck building lessons for this type of archetype through the gameplay. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you've enjoyed the analysis and fun gameplay, and I'll see you next time.